That's what you want to see when you slice into your brisket. If you're not following this how-to video on brisket, now that should be illegal. Let's get into it. Today we're going to smoke a small supermarket brisket. Now cooking time for this recipe will be 5 hours. Or for those of you who love to use my beer timer, you're looking at a 10 beer cook. Cheers! If you like brisket videos, give this one a thumbs up. I've seen way too many people on barbecue pages and forums asking, how do we smoke a small brisket? Is it quicker? Is it easier? Do leprechauns really exist? All of these questions and more that you didn't ask will be answered shortly. I'm starting with this 1.9 kilogram small brisket I picked up from my local supermarket. I'm sorry, Mick, but you couldn't supply me with the right emotional support animal I needed for this video. And as always, it's best to glove up. Now we just want to remove it from its packaging, and we need to trim off some of this harder fat. And we can see that someone's done a good number on that, and by now Mick's having a good giggle to himself that I didn't go to him. Just want to get your knife underneath the fat, and you just want to point the blade upwards, and it will slide under just the fat and the silver skin. Just angling it up a bit. Now trimming a brisket is a personal preference. Some people like to leave a little fat, some like to leave a lot, some don't like any. I say you do you and I'll do me. I'm going to flip that over, and all of this is really hard fat and it's not going to render out, so we may as well remove all of it. Just take off little bit by little bit until you get down to that meat. And I'm always going to round off those corners because they will tend to dry out. And there we have it. I think I've butchered that enough. Most butchers will call it butchering. But yes, we'll see how that little flap goes. It may dry out, but I'm going to keep it on there for this cook. Who said emotional support animals had to be alive? To season a brisket, the options are endless. You can use a multitude of rubs that are out on the market now, or keep it simple and use the good old tried and tested. That being the stock standard SPG or salt, pepper, garlic. Sergeant seasoning on board for action. Enemy acquired, preparing to salt. Enemy advancing, reloading with pepper. They just won't stop, finishing off with garlic. Now start by applying the rub to the sides and the bottom of any meat you're applying seasoning to. And then finish on the top, your presentation side, where you want the bark to form. And once the brisket is fully covered in rub, give it a consensual pat and pop it aside. If you do share this video, don't forget to share it with the comment how to take care of your emotional support animal. Today I'm using a 57cm Weber kettle, and I'm going to be utilising the snake method because I want to be smoking at temps of 150 degrees Celsius today. How I'll do this is by carefully stacking briquettes in the Weber to form a snake. And as you can see, I've got 2 rows on the bottom, and I'm now currently stacking 1 on top. They're in a domino formation, so as they burn, they will just keep tipping over. The neater you make this, the more consistent the burn you'll get. Then I'll add 14 briquettes to a chimney starter. I'll light them up, and once they're fully ashed over, I'll dump them on one end of the snake to act as a fuse. And then put in a drip tray. Because this brisket is going to be squirting out juice like it has an OnlyFans page. Smut! We all knew it was coming. And then I'll grab a couple of chunks of cherry wood and put them on the snake, not touching the lit fuel. And I'm going to leave a 50mm gap in between each piece, as wood burns quicker than charcoal, so don't let those pieces touch, or your snake will burn a lot hotter and quicker than you want it to. Now you will still see spikes of heat as that snake catches a light on those pieces of wood, but that's normal. Little spikes like that, fine. Carefully put the grill back in. Now put the lid on, making sure all the vents are wide open and that lid vent is on the opposite side of our lit fuel. And once our temp gets roughly 30 degrees Celsius off our target temp of 150 degrees Celsius, we want to close down the bowl vent to roughly halfway. The temp will keep climbing, but it will slow down and it should settle on our target temp. And once the Weber's temp has been stable for 30 minutes, we can put our emotional support animal inside it. For those wondering, my SPG formula for brisket is 30% kosher salt, 60% coarsely ground black pepper, and 10% garlic powder. The Weber's temp is stable, so we can put the brisket in the Weber on the opposite side of the lit fuel. Grab a spray bottle and give the brisket a light spritz. Then putting the lid back on, making sure that lid vent is over our emotional support animal. This is going to do two things. It's going to draw the heat and the smoke over our food. And I'll come back and check this in around about 2 hours. By spritzing the brisket, we are promoting the smoke to adhere to it, as smoke is attracted to anything moist. Smoked. Oh, and for those wondering, my spritzing formula is made up of 3 equal parts. That's 1 part water to 1 part water to 1 part water. Just make sure you shake it up before every use. Subscribing to this channel is the easiest way to ruin your weekends. We are now 2 hours down. I just want to check the brisket and see how it's coming along. It's looking great. We may as well check the internal temp while we're here. It's around 57 degrees Celsius. I want the bark to be a little bit more set than it is right now. And also I want that internal temp to come up a bit more. So we'll just give it another spritz and put the lid on. And we'll let that ride out for another hour. How much you let the bark set is a personal preference. Most people start the next process in this cooking stage of a brisket when the internal temp reaches roughly 71 to 76 degrees Celsius internally. The brisket's been smoking away for 3 hours now, so it's time to check on it again. Oh, I'm loving the colour. And it's reading 67 degrees Celsius. So we can get it off the heat, and I'm going to place it in some flexible metal that I've got resting in a tray. Adding in 100 grams of unsalted butter. And the reason I have it resting in a tray is because we're adding in 1/4 cup of warmed up beef stock as well. Now just wrap this back up and place it back in the Weber on the opposite side of the lit charcoal. Pop the lid back on, making sure that lid vent is over our brisket. That way we're drawing that heat directly over it. And we're going to let that ride out for a couple more hours until it's probing tender. And this will be roughly when that internal temp reaches 96 degrees Celsius. And currently the internal temp of the brisket is in that stall stage, where the internal temp really won't climb that fast anymore. Hence why we wrapped it up in foil, speeding it along. Comment below if you've eaten your emotional support animal before. The brisket has spent the last 2 hours wrapped up in a bath of beef stock and butter. So it's time to check it. Just get it out of the Weber. Make sure you put the lid back on so you don't get too big of a heat spike. Now just open it up, watch out for the steam. Don't have your face directly over the top. And it's currently reading 99 degrees Celsius. But look at that, the probe slides in and out with ease, like it was heavily lubricated.
That's what she said.
So we are going to leave it uncovered and allow that brisket to steam off for about 15 minutes before we wrap it back up. At this point, I can only apologise and say those sort of comments are going to happen again and again and again and again and again. With rest time over, we can wrap the brisket back up in the flexible metal, making that parcel nice and tight. And then wrap it up in an old towel and place that into an esky. Don't forget to put the lid on, and we're gonna hold it in the esky for at least an hour. And this will allow the internal temp of the brisket to drop a bit to a normal eating temperature. But did you notice I said hold and not rest? That's because you hold a small piece of meat like a steak. With larger cuts of meat that you have cooked way past normal eating temp, you are holding the temp and allowing that internal temperature to slowly drop before serving. The brisket has been laying around for an hour now. It's time to open it up and see what we've created. Now this is a good time to glove up and onto a chopping board so we can slice it up. Oh, Look at that. If that doesn't get you salivating, I don't know what will. And now we're just going to slice it all up, ready to serve. Perfectly cooked brisket. Now the only place for this is straight into the gob.